It sets a powerful example for the next generation. I am proud of that. They stay humble through everything. The scene at that French airport was the first real warning sign. But most people just missed it. It was all there in the footage. The timestamps and the shocked faces of airport staff who had no idea what was coming. The Filipino wave was hitting, not in ones or twos, but all at once like something never seen before. Terminal shut down. Some were in France, watching it unfold. Nadal was left speechless because Eala hadn't even landed. This is May 2026. Officially ranked number 42 with a career high of 29. The highest any Filipino has ever climbed in due to history. She pushed world number 2 Rybakina in Rome just 8 days ago. Now she is in Strasbourg, 7 days from Roland Garros, still hunting clay court minutes while her massive army is already gathering in Paris. Melbourne saw major traffic jams around her court before dawn. Abu Dhabi saw workers walk off entire shifts, and Rome saw Philippine diplomats ditch their desks for courtside seats. Coco Gauff even admitted she has to mentally prepare for the Eala crowd before a single ball is struck. Now Roland Garros is the stage, and France has never seen anything like this. This channel called it first. Subscribe before the draw drops, because what happened at that airport when the Filipino army arrived is the story every broadcaster is afraid to tell. Let us look at what the cameras actually caught. May 2026, Charles de Gaulle Airport, Paris. Terminal 2 was simply not built for what was coming. No terminal is, because what walked through those doors was not just a delegation or a simple tour group. It was not a corporate convoy, but a massive wave of supporters with flags, banners, and shirts with one name across the back. Security teams who had spent decades managing crowds later described it as something they had absolutely no training for. Lines backed up through the arrivals hall and spilled out onto the pavement in a total bottleneck. Staff were pulled from other terminals just to manage the flow. Even then, regular passenger movement slowed to a near standstill. France had hosted the World Cup and the Olympics, but France had never hosted a phenomenon quite like this. A Filipino surgeon mobilized a 20-year-old tennis star who had not even won a Grand Slam singles title yet. That detail is crucial. She had not won yet. This was not some victory parade for a champion. This was pure anticipation from a diaspora that has been waiting for this exact moment longer than most tennis fans even realize. To understand why this happened, you have to look further back than just that airport scene. You need to go back to a country where courts were cracked, nets were broken, and fences were left unfinished. Eala said it herself in Paris last year, standing before journalists at Roland Garros for the first time. She explained that the gap between where she learned the game and where she stood that day was beyond their understanding. Growing up on those broken courts, she built her game on surfaces that European pros would refuse to even touch at 13. Her family made a move that would change the history of Philippine tennis forever. They sent her to Mallorca, Spain, to train at the Rafael Nadal Academy. That academy is not just a development program. It is not some standard scholarship scheme or a simple wildcard pathway. It is a philosophy. The Nadal Academy was built on the idea that suffering is not something a champion avoids. It is something they learn to absorb and control. It is something a champion chooses. Every drill, every session, and every early morning run on Mallorca clay carries that ethos, and Eala absorbed it completely. She graduated from the academy in 2023. By then, she had already captured the 2022 US Open Girls title, becoming the first Filipino junior champion in history. She left Mallorca with a trophy, a rising rank, and a work ethic that the Warrior Tour was about to discover the hard way. Her breakout came at the March 2025 Miami Open, entering as a wildcard ranked 140th. She had no expectations beyond survival. The tournament did not see her as a threat. Then she stunned Jelena Ostapenko in round 2. Madison Keys followed, as the reigning Australian Open champion was sent packing. Then came Iga Swiatek, world number 1 and 6-time Grand Slam champion. In the quarterfinals, 3 top 10 players in one tournament, one wild card from Miller standing her ground, refusing to be intimidated by anyone. When Swiatek's final backhand drifted long, Eala did not scream or collapse in shock. She just stood there wide-eyed, taking it in as if she had been preparing for that win her entire life. She eventually lost to Jessica Pegula in the semifinals, but by then the real story had already been written. The Philippines had a real tennis star, and the massive Filipino fan base began to mobilize in force. What happened next unfolded over a single year at a speed that surprised everyone. By June 2025, she reached the Eastbourne final. By August, she captured her first title in Guadalajara, Mexico. By the end of August, she became the first Filipino in the Open era to win a Grand Slam main draw match, defeating Clara Tauson, ranked 14 in the world, at the US Open in New York. In the stands that day, the Filipino fans were so loud that the opposing team admitted they had to specifically train for that atmosphere. She lost in round 2 to the woman who became the finalist, but the moment held, the milestone stood. Across every time zone, the Filipino diaspora watched in real time, knowing exactly what this victory meant. November 19, 2025, that date deserves its own moment, exactly 1 year after Rafael Nadal played his very last professional match, a Davis Cup lost to Bottleneck van de Zandschulp that ended a 23-year career. He stepped back onto a court for the first time. Nadal was 39 years old, a 22-time Grand Slam champion with 14 Open titles to his legendary name. He could have hit with anyone on the planet. Instead, he chose his own academy in Mallorca to start again. The Rafael Nadal Academy became the setting for something quiet, yet deeply symbolic. The two lefties spent 45 minutes together, trading heavy baseline rallies and putting in the kind of work the academy was built for. Later, Nadal shared the session online, saying it felt great to be back, that he loved practicing with her, and promised he would be stronger next time. Think about that, a 22-time champion telling a 20-year-old from Quezon City that he needed to get on her level. The tennis world saw the footage. For a second, a genuine, unscripted moment left everyone watching completely and utterly speechless. But there is a detail about that session that the major headlines almost entirely ignored. In an interview with Andy Roddick, Eala was asked about life around Nadal, her mentor, the man who built her game, and whose philosophy she carries into every match. Her response was instant. She said she still goes completely speechless every time he is around. She says it never gets easier. Knowing his achievements makes her lose her words every time. The irony here is almost too cinematic to feel real. The player Nadal is speechless watching, and the student speechless next to her mentor. The academy is now far more than just a training ground. It has become the meeting point for two careers forged by that same red clay. The same discipline, the same grit, two left-handers on a court in Mallorca, a moment that the tennis world will not forget anytime soon. Then 2026 hit, and the Filipino army scaled up in ways no one had predicted. At the season opener in Auckland, Eala reached the semifinals, breaking into the WTA Top 50 for the very first time. A massive milestone for the Philippines. Then came the big one, the Australian Open, Melbourne Park, January 2026. Eala was drawn against Alicia Parks in round 1 on court 6, a smaller court tucked away in the massive complex. The Filipino fans in Melbourne were there before the gates even opened. By match time, the lines for court 6 were so long they caused traffic jams on the roads outside. Even the BBC covered the chaos. The footage went everywhere. Amanda Anisimova watched from the stands, telling reporters she stayed because the energy was unlike anything she had ever felt at a tournament. Eala lost that match, but the fans did not care. The standing ovation lasted longer than most championship celebrations in Melbourne. The tour moved to the Middle East, Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai. At every single stop, the same pattern emerged. Fans arrived hours early. Huge lines formed before the gates opened. Inside, the noise during her matches felt closer to a football stadium than a tennis court. In Dubai, Eala stunned world number 8 Jasmine Paolini in the third round. The explosion inside the stadium that night was something the Dubai Championships had never experienced in 30 years. The Dubai Championships became the ultimate proof of how quickly her matches were reshaping the energy of the professional tour. Coco Gauff, before facing Eala in the quarterfinals, Gauff was asked how she planned to handle that intense environment. Her answer was calm. She said she had dealt with intense crowds in Rome and Paris, believing that kind of energy is actually great for the sport, but she admitted she had to prepare mentally for something much different than a standard match. Then the European clay season hit, a brutal test. Her game was always built for fast, hard courts. That lefty serve and heavy topspin were perfectly tuned for high speed and a predictable bounce. Clay changes the game. It slows the ball, forces longer rallies, and rewards patience over pure aggression. On paper, this is the surface that should have given her the most trouble. She battled through Linz, Stuttgart, Madrid, and Rome. She lost to Ostapenko, dropped an early round in Stuttgart, and then fell in Madrid. Then in Rome, something shifted. She won her opening match and then avenged an earlier loss by defeating Wang Xiyu in straight sets. She reached the Italian Open third round for the first time ever, eventually falling to world number 2 Elena Rybakina. in a match that was incredibly close. Afterward, she told Tennis Channel she was finally finding her rhythm on the clay. She is physically, mentally stronger than a year ago, and that winter grind is starting to show. This week, the journey continues in Strasbourg. Originally entered in qualifying, a top 40 player hunted more clay matches just days before a Grand Slam. That speaks volumes about the Rafael Nadal Academy mindset. Then, a sudden withdrawal bumped her into the main draw. She sits in the same half as Emma Raducanu, with a draw that potentially includes Mari Boskova and other threats before the later rounds. 7 days from now, Roland Garros begins. The draw ceremony will place her in a field featuring Aryna Sabalenka, defending champion Coco Gauff, Iga Swiatek, and Elena Rybakina. Last year, she fell in the first round at Roland Garros to Amanda Anisimova, 0-6, 6-2, 3-6. Back then, she arrived as a historic debutant and flag bearer, the first Filipino woman to ever enter a Grand Slam Open era draw. This year, she arrives as a different beast, a top 40 player with a Grand Slam win and a WTA title, a career-high ranking of world number 29, backed by an army already checking into Paris hotels and booking tickets, just waiting for the draw to decide which court becomes their home base. France simply has no protocol for this energy. Roland Garros has hosted Serena Williams with American flags covering every available section of court. Philippe Chatrier. It has hosted Roger Federer with Swiss red and white colors draped across entire stadiums. But it has never hosted a Filipino diaspora of this massive scale. This level of coordination and intensity for one player who grew up on cracked Quezon City courts and fought to become a top 30 star on the tour. Organizers know it is coming. The players know it too. The French Tennis Federation has studied the Melbourne footage and Abu Dhabi scenes. They felt the Rome atmosphere and realized what hits Paris in 7 days will not fit any familiar template. And Rafael Nadal, he is retired, living in Mallorca. He watches from a distance now, after 23 years at the center of the sport, observing it all from the outside. But his academy produced this. The Rafael Nadal Academy stands by his core philosophy that suffering is always a choice. That work never stops, and the price of winning at Roland Garros is a level most people are never willing to pay. That philosophy is walking into Paris in the body of a 20-year-old lefty from the Philippines. He saw her potential long before the rankings. He sent messages after Miami, Eastbourne, and her Big Us Open breakthrough. He even stepped out of retirement to hit with her once, quietly without any ceremony. But the tennis world understood exactly what it meant. He admitted she made him want to be stronger. That is the real story hidden in the airport footage. Not just cows for show, but the arrival of something much heavier than that. A nation told for decades it could not produce a world-class player was watching its own hero walk through the terminal at Charles de Gaulle. Racket bag on her shoulder. Roland Garros just 7 days away. The terminal did not stop because of some disorder. It slowed because of the weight of the moment. Alex Eala had not even hit a ball yet. France was already reacting to her presence. If this gives you the insight mainstream media misses, subscribe and hit notifications, because once the Roland Garros draw starts and first round matches begin, and when that Filipino crowd fills her assigned court, this is where you will follow the story for what it really is.